honestly, there's not much to calculate because you must capture the e4 pawn, but then knight c3 is just smack in your face. There's no answer to it. And Magnus, after that dangerous game number 1, delivers an emphatic game number 2.
Yeah, if your pet opening is going to run into stuff like that, it's only bad news. We have d3. This is obviously some sort of super sideline. It's almost like a King's Indian defense. And now white, when the move b6 appears, you should be taking in the center. And now white just has 2 center pawns. You could even play a3 and play this like a pure Sicilian, getting a position like that. We'll see what Magnus chooses, but he already has a slight advantage because he has 2 center pawns against the 1 for Jospam, and very comfortable position for Magnus.
Yeah, you make a good point that playing e4 to kick the knight and then following up later with d4 is so tempting, but yeah, just build it up. a3 to stop knight b4, so you don't have to worry about that. And then, yeah, probably e4, knight c3, and pawn to d4 looks like a good outcome.
I wonder what Magnus is thinking about. I would be quite afraid if he went for a 30-second thought.
That's telling me, like, wait a minute, did I blunder something immediately in this position? I mean, there's other things to do. Bishop d2 and knight c3 directly. You could transform things immediately by playing d4 just to gain that square, and then maybe intend pawn to e4 on the next turn. So there's definitely a lot of move orders, and Magnus, he knows what he's going for, but he's trying to perfect the move order here.
Opts for knight to c3. Jose responding quite quickly. It's completely fascinating. The amount of things that went through his head. Obviously, e4 was the emphatic move, trying to grab the center. He's instead going for a structural transformation. He wanted the cluster of pawns in the middle and the kind of loner a pawn. Now the knights are just going to get traded, and he will have the 2 pawns in the center. This kind of reminds you of the old school games, the Queen's Indian games played from the 1970s, where black would play this precise setup and then trade, and then white would try to have 2 pawns in the center. The most common thing here that can happen is this sacrificial idea with pawn going to d5, taking, locking the center. And will we see that, or are we going to get, more subdued Magnus just going for a positional game?
Well, it sort of depends on what setup Jose goes for, because now you might expect maybe queen c2, pawn to e4. You can support e4 with queen c2 or rook e1. And okay, here you could even develop bishop f4. Yes, you could play b3 and bishop b2, but I think it's just unnecessarily slow. Take the nice diagonal here, develop immediately, and you're always going to have to watch out for a potential move of pawn to e4. And the other nice maneuver that you often see in these positions is knight f3 finding its way to d3. Sometimes e5 d3, sometimes e1 d3, which is a nice square for that piece.
Yeah, if you did a poll of viewers of the channel right now, how many would vote for knight e1? It would be like 12 people, and it would have been by accident.
Depends what the point of the poll is, because Magnus has been asking people to play, predict his openings for Title Tuesday. So I can imagine a lot of knight e1 enjoyers say, hey, Magnus, go ahead and try to win with that one.
This is a very, very high-level maneuver. Yeah, it happens in some English positions. I almost feel like Magnus just kind of wanted to play this structure out. He definitely knew that he had a small advantage with the 2-on-1 in the middle, and he could have pushed it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, playing this structure, building some experience, another position where you've got to be super accurate with black. This is purely a structural game. Symmetrical pawns, strange piece placements, and kind of interactions. What does black do now with white threatening rook d1 and e4, or just e4 straight away?
Yeah, you have to remember as well, Magnus he's in an obvious different category to everyone else, meaning when he's playing these matches, he wants to try a lot of different positions to figure out how his opponent is going to handle them. Where is he weak? Is it equal positions that he kind of struggles in to find a plan? Is it the middle game? Is it the openings? He's just going to test you in these different types of positions, because Jospam is pretty much going to show up and just play his game. He's got his systems that they work, but Magnus is just going to sort of poke around and figure out the best place to spend his time.
By the way, e4 was going to be well met with the bishop retreating.
Hmm.
Good double rook placement. Nice idea from Jose, by the way, trading the queens. I think that's very nice, actually. I think he's playing excellent, I have to say. Like, very resourceful, good maneuvering back there.
And we're seeing this knight e5 to likely d3, I want to say. It's just a square that the piece usually ends up on. And it's just, I don't know, it's surprisingly effective. It helps b4, it hits the bishop on c5, blocks the d file so you can just focus on the c file instead. And it also, of course, gets those bishops traded. So let's see. He has to continue to play as well as you're pointing out he already has. Minute deficit. This is Magnus Carlsen territory. You think you're equal, but you're down on time, and you just have to keep finding a plan. Shake of the head there, Levy. I don't know if he loves it.
He ends up trading. Obviously, the knight is going to go replace the bishop. Magnus backs up. But it very much is a position where white gets to call the next shots.
Mm-hmm.
Knight c4, not knight to d3, but...
Yeah, I like knight d3 there, but this has obviously got an immediate threat packed with it. Plus, e3 and e4, maybe both, are going to be played.
Yes, e3 is nice, making the bishop retreat, and then after that e4, and then maybe even e5, just a triple
That's
combo,
right.
attacking every. By the way, yeah, e3, bishop f6, e4 just wins the b6 pawn in some lines. So,
Yep.
we could be seeing that here.
Yeah, and the b6 pawn can't move forward. You got b6 and a5 just completely stuck. So c4, much more aggressive square, and Magnus, he's got double the time and everything to play for. You might even see one of those, cagey moves, bishop e1. Like, he's got time to plan this out.
This is an interesting move, looking to take away the f6 square from both of black's pieces. And you can't play rook d7, probably. It just runs into... Also, there is a bishop hanging in the center of the board. That would be a nice bonus to all of this. So
I wonder, is knight f6 the move that he's going to land on?
Ooh.
Obviously, here, he's doubting himself, I think, because of e4, but then he found rook takes c4 in that line, which I think made him feel more confident.
That is a nice... And king f3. Yeah, there we go. Activate the king in the endgame. I think we're going for a Magnus endgame grind with his opponent having a little bit less time.
Yep. But also, Magnus missed that. He definitely thought that he, I think, had that e4. Saw a little bit of a sign on the cam there. Nevertheless, he's not assuming any risk, and he still has a big time advantage. But Josma has to prove himself, Levy. He has to prove that he can take a position that he's played well, that he's genuinely equalized with. But when he's low on time, he has to show that he can keep up.
Knight going to c6. Well, I think he'll keep up for this move for sure. Question is, where does he put his rook? Okay.
Yeah, knight has to retreat here. I guess knight d4 has a few ideas to it. I like the knight there. You can play e3, solidify next. Depending on the move, yeah, knight takes f5 could be an idea, but not anymore.
Yeah, I like e3. Maybe bring the king. E3 is a Magnus type of move.
Yeah, you don't want that knight on d4 to be too loose for too long. And if you can, usually h3 and g4 is another good way to play against that pawn structure.
Because also this pawn will be a long-term liability. If the h-file opens and white can go rook h1 at any moment, it's going to be super unpleasant for black. And I don't like this. I'm on 20 seconds. Knights are on the board. It's a recipe to get tricked.
Knight endgames are the trickiest endgames, truly, for especially for strong players, because there's less, hard and fast rules about these endgames. Knights can make it to any square. It's hard to play on certain color complexes.
This move at 4 is very curious because it locks down the two pawns forever, but it also drastically weakens the e3 pawn, and I don't know if Magnus is going to go for this. It's just so committal.
Yeah, I like it, though. I do like the idea of f4. If maybe e4, knight goes to d4, and just kind of sit there and hang out, threatening the f-pawn.
And then you kind of try to run over here. Yeah, the weakness, obviously, if the pawns were traded, it would be a massive positional edge for white. But just the existence of the pawns together makes this annoying. And you don't really want to do this with 15 seconds bonus time, but we'll see.
I can definitely see him playing it. For sure, the time spent is him eyeballing it, because if you don't, black plays king e6, maybe f6. Like things get well defended, right? It's not a clear breakthrough anymore. So there you go. Okay, we will see this, in fact.
And why? Some signs of life. King here. Maybe the knight's going to do a little runaround, but to where?
Yep. This is what I mean. Knights are so tricky. Knight a7 to b5, perhaps.
Yep. Yep. Maybe now you build this up. You build up these pawns at some point. 3 seconds for Jose. He's got to move.
Yeah, this 1 second is unforgiving.
Okay. B4 maybe. But still he's defending.
Yeah,
oh!
Knight g5?
B5.
Yep. I like that. I do think knight g5 is an idea to hunt some pawns there.
It's just equal. Black is doing very well defensively.
These are the tough moves, though. Knight g5 being a threat. Uh-oh. Yeah, and he just threw it away. He knows it. Like I said, those are the tough moves. Oh, my goodness. Magnus, magic, does it again in the endgame.